Good afternoon, everybody. How are you today? We're just getting our um, presentations all ready for you. We're so excited that you joined us today for the Overdrive Presents In the Know, Big Children's Titles from Smaller Presses. I'm Kelly Coyle-Crivelli. I'm from Penguin Random House Library Marketing. We're happy to answer any questions you put in the chat. We have a great lineup of titles for you today. From let's see, there's different presentations, but in my presentation in the beginning, I'm going to be giving you a little snippet of some children's and young adult titles from some of our other client publishers that are not on the call today. So you'll be getting the slides and you'll be getting all of the information in the wrap-up report, so don't feel the need to write down any titles or anything like that. But if you do have any questions at all, you could always email us at library@penguinrandomhouse.com. Again, like I said, I'm Kelly Coyle-Crivelli from Penguin Random House. Today we'll be hearing from Astra Publishing House, Charlesbridge, Holiday House, Tundra, and Quirk Books. And just one housekeeping note, Holiday House is unable to attend live, so they were kind enough to send us over some scripts so we can still make sure you hear about their titles, but you're going to be hearing from me twice, so lucky you. But again, thanks for joining us. We have Charnel Johnson. Thank you for doing the back end. So again, like I said, if you have any questions or anything, please put them in the chat and we will get back to you as soon as possible. All right, so on to the titles. First up, we have from Pushkin, beautiful books from Pushkin always, and this is The Gardens of Dor, and this is a classical masterpiece of middle grade fantasy by the author of The King of the Copper Mountains. This is for readers who love classic stories about storytelling, like The Never-Ending Story. Dor was once a city of merriment, music, and dancing. Now it lies in gray and silent under the spell of the witch Cyrdas. When a young princess arrives in Dor on a secret quest, she finds a town full of mystery, magic, and danger. As she meets with succession of strange, funny, and frightening characters, Dor's true history and the true nature of her quest become clear through the stories they tell each other. Can the princess find the Gardens of Dor and free the city from its evil enchantment? This is a beautiful book, and we hope that you will read it aloud to your patrons that are 8 years and up. Next up from us is Who Doesn't Love a Good Archie? This is Archie Decades. This journey back to the Silver Age with the mirth of a nation himself, Archie Andrews. Continue the 80th anniversary celebration of Archie Comics with this special retrospective collection. Archie shined bright in the 1960s when his standalone title proved to be interesting, hilarious, and unforgettable, and the dates were always double booked. Decades features some of the iconic stories that cemented his lasting imprint on the world. This is just one of the great books coming from Archie this season, and we just never want anybody to forget how wonderful Archie comics are for patrons. Next up is Ada and Zagaman, a tale of software, skateboards, and raspberry ice cream. This is from No Starch Press. They have great books for programming, for your STEM sections. They're really great for your younger future IT programming, anything computer. They have great books with illustrations that are amazing, and we hope that you will check out No Starch Press for your STEM and your technology sections. And this one is a modern day fairy tale that conveys the joy of tinkering and calls for self-determined use of software. The famous inventor Zagaman lives in a huge villa above the city. Adults and children alike love his inventions and are desperate to have them. But then something happens. When Zagaman wants to take another close-up look at his inventions during a walk through the city, a child hits him in the shin with a skateboard, and it hurts. Enraged, the inventor makes a momentous decision. That clever girl Ada sees through what's going on, and together with her friends, she forges a plan. It's an illustrated children's book, and it tells the story of a famous inventor and a girl named Ada who is a curious tinkerer. And their friendship leads to explorations in technology and experimenting and programming. It's really fun. Next up is Basil and Oregano. Come on, how can you not love that? From Dark Horse Comics, and they have some really fun books for young adults as well as obviously adults, but we'd love for you to take a look at their young adult section as well. This is for fans of fantasy stories set in boarding schools, and it's for ages 10 years and up. Mix 2 parts the Great British Bake Off with 1 part magical boarding school plus a generous dash of romance, and you've got basil and oregano, a sweetly delicious lower young adult graphic novel. It's a YA LGBTQA plus tale suitable for all audiences, and it's perfect for readers of The Prince and the Dressmaker, The Witch Boy, and Mooncakes. Next, we have a really Soho Teen always has these really fun adventurous books for young adults. They always just get a little bit of everything into these books. And this is for fans of Baby Driver, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and other classic fast-paced teen comedies. Gail Agnes, it's adrenaline-packed joyride of a debut in an ode to Gen Z and chaotic teens. Best friends Loli Crawford and Ryan Pope have earned their nickname, the Bonnie and Clyde of Woolridge High. From illegal snack swapping in kindergarten to reckless car surfing in high school, they have been causing trouble in their uptight California town forever. But everyone knows that the mischief starts with Loli. When it comes to chasing thrills, drama, and adventure, no one is on her level. In this book, she'll face her most dangerous adventure yet, and it's really fun, and it's a really great book about friendship and teen angst, which who doesn't love that? All right, next up is The Little Lab, Fantastic Science for Kids from Good Housekeeping. First Home Kids, their books are so fun for kids, and they've got lots of projects in there that are accessible. And this one, perfect to keep patrons busy on the rainy days, but really great little projects for kids. Parents, caregivers, teachers, and homeschoolers alike, especially for kids from 4 to 7, who are involved in remote and homeschooling, need ideas, and want help to supplement their kids' STEAM skills and in an entertaining, safe, and accessible way. And this is the value authoritative science content that is set for these grade levels. And it's for all budding scientists, and it's got experiments that include how to take eye-catching and helpful photos. It's got, explaining why when you rub a balloon on your hair, it sticks to the wall, all sorts of fun things that'll keep young scientists engrossed and with hands-on fun for a long time, which is what a lot of people are looking for in these kind of books. Next up is Spinoza. This is from Triangle Square, which we always has important books and a great nonfiction biographies about people in history that possibly younger kids would not have learned about before. And so this is for readers of Jewish and religious history. And it's entertaining and accessible. And it's an introduction to the radical philosopher of freedom of thought and religion. And it's the only biography of Spinoza for young adults. And it was the winner of the National Jewish Book Award for Children's and Young Adult Literature. So it's an important book for you to have in your collections. And it got a starred review from Kirkus saying clarity, accessibility, and spot-on relevance to issues facing modern society make this a must-read. And we just wanted to make sure you knew about it now that it was one of the awards for the Jewish Book Award for Children. So it's an important book for your collection. Next up from me is Abolition is Love, and this is another title from Triangle Square. This is for parents, teachers, and librarians who want to introduce justice and abolition concepts to their young readers. What can abolition mean for a child? How can it help them dream a different future for their community? In Abolition is Love, Amelia learns about collective care, mutual aid, and abolitionist ideas as they help their parents get ready for the annual Prisoners' Justice Day. This is a great book about teaching kids bigger concepts. And the last book from me is a book of Norse myths. Sorry, that's hard to say. And this is from the New York Review Children's Collections. Again, beautiful books, lots of mythology in there. And this is for parents who grew up reading mythology and want to share it with their children, for admirers of Scandinavian literature and culture. And it has a Caldecott medal-winning author, and we hope you'll get this for your mythology collections as well. It's beautiful. Yes, you're right in the chat. It's beautiful. And there's illustrations throughout that depict the wondrous world of other Norse folklore and its fantastical northern landscapes. So we hope that you check this one out as well. So thank you. That is my first presentation, and I will see you all back in a little bit. Thank you. Next up, we have Astra Publishing House. Take it away.
All right, thank you, Kelly. Welcome to Astra Books for Young Readers. I'm really excited to be here. My name is Lynette Kim. I am here with Chelsea Abdullah. Starting the fall, you'll see a couple more imprints up on this slide, but for today, let's go ahead and kick it off with our first title. Next slide, thank you. It's Papa's Magical Water Jug Clock. This is one of our lead titles of the year, and it's a sneak peek at our forthcoming imprint, Minerva. The multi-hyphenate Jesus Trejo is a comedian who's had his own Showtime comedy special. He's on the Netflix show Mr. Iglesias, and he hosts an LA-based celebrity taco tasting show, which I hope he'll invite me on sometime. He and Tejana artist Eliza Kinks teamed up for a joyful, proud homage to everyday immigrant working class life and family, drawn from the author's own childhood. And the result is this zany, raucous picture book in the vein of Pete the Cat and No David. Next slide, please. It is Saturday. Little Jesus goes along on a landscaping job with his father in his very cool van with all his very cool tools. Papa gives him a special job. Little Jesus is in charge of a magical water jug clock. Why is it magical? Because when it runs out, it means the workday is done. Next slide. It is a hot day, though, and little Jesus finds himself giving water to the thirsty animals that come through. Turns out there are a lot of thirsty animals, and before you know it, the water jug is empty way before the day is done. Ruh-roh. Next slide. Will little Jesus be fired? Is the water jug really magical? These are just end papers from the book, which I absolutely love. Next slide. This is a funny, heartwarming story with a mischievous little hero. He has a big lesson to learn about the value of resources like time and water, both of which have a magic of their own. We're proud to be publishing the book in both English and Spanish. Next slide, please. All right, a delicious story. Barney Salzberg recently partnered with Jamie Lee Curtis for the book, What Do You See? And now he's back with a very delicious story. Little Mouse is looking for a story. After all, they're in a book, but Big Mouse has a confession. The story is gone because he ate it. And what follows is just this delightful back and forth between the two mice. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. So creativity clearly takes patience and discipline. And sometimes it means making and fixing mistakes. And next slide. These two will also have to work out a few kinks in their friendship along the way. Next slide. If you love meta stories like The Book with No Words, There's a Monster at the End of This Book, and Elephant and Piggy, then this is the book for you. By the time you get to the surprise at the end, you'll realize that Big Mouse and Little Mouse have been delivering a story all along. Next slide, please.
So next up and hot off the press, you won't be able to resist the gravitational pull of Push-Pull Morning, a delightful poetry picture book by Lisa Westberg Peters and illustrated by Serge Bloch that will make physics fun. Next. What better way to learn the fundamentals of physics than with a puppy? A very cute, energetic puppy that presents the various phases in the form of dog. Solid when eating dinner, liquid when pouring herself into a basket, and gas when rushing after a fly. Next. This picture book about a boy and his dog and all the shenanigans they get up to in their day is the perfect introduction to physics. Next. It's playful, informative, and it's also clever poetry, which makes it perfect for not just physics lessons, but also Poetry Month, and honestly, any day of the year. It is never a bad time to read about dogs, especially when they're as funny and zippy as the canine in Push-Pull Morning. Next.
All right, How Birds Sleep by husband and wife duo David Obakowski and Sarah Pedri. If ever there was a comforting nonfiction bedtime read aloud, this would be it. Next slide. Through short, soothing prose and paintings, this is a really fascinating book that shows birds in their nighttime environments, whether it's in urban or rural areas. Next slide. Or on land, or even on sea, believe it or not. Next slide. The extensively researched details and beautiful art will delight everyone from the littlest city kid to the youngest country dweller. Next slide. It includes back matter notes on climate change and even a few practical tips on how kids can help our bird friends get a little shut-eye. Next slide.
So next up, written and illustrated by award-winning creators Carol Boston Weatherford and E.B. Lewis, You Are My Pride is a beautiful picture book that speaks to readers in the voice of Mother Africa, reminding all of us humans from various corners of the world of our timeless bond. Next. With the comforting tone of a mother speaking to her child and the cadence of a master poet, Carol Boston Weatherford tells the story of human evolution. Next. E.B. Lewis brings that story to life with stunning watercolor paintings, rendering this familiar story in haunting new strokes. Next. Kirkus gave the book a starred review and called it, quote, a strikingly illustrated, innovative story of human evolution at the intersections of science and art. Next. In addition to being a compelling read for all audiences, it is also very informative, including back matter with nonfiction information about human evolution. This is a compassionate book, perfect for inspiring empathy in young readers and starting conversations about important topics like evolution and anti-racism. Next.
All right, my indigo world. Chances are, if you were to ask a random adult or kid what their favorite color is, they'll probably say it's color blue. Blue is certainly artist Rosa Chang's favorite color, so much so that she's researched and written a book about it. Next slide. Rosa talks about how she was heavily influenced by the color as a child in South Korea, and later as an artist, she was fascinated to learn of its significance in other cultures. Next slide. Now she's part of a community that grows its own indigo, and she invites young readers to consider the significance of the color in their own cultures and maybe even grow their own indigo plants. Next slide. From cover to end pages, the book has this really amazing textured look to it. It also includes back matter about indigo plants, as well as a couple recipes for indigo dye and a shade map, which shows how different countries use indigo in their own stunning ways. Next slide.
Next up, meet Jeannette Rankin, the very first U.S. Congresswoman and the star of A Take Charge Girl Blazes a Trail to Congress, written by Gretchen Wolfley and illustrated by Rebecca Gibbon. This inspiring picture book biography begins in Jeanette's childhood, showing young readers that she was a take charge girl even from a young age when she was taking care of all of her little brothers and sisters. Next. Fast forward to 1907, when Jeanette saw children living in poor and dangerous living conditions and strived to make change by taking charge and helping those in need. Next. And then in 1910, Jeanette decided to take charge on a grander scale, campaigning for the right for women to vote, and then, when her home state Montana gave women that right, she ran for Congress and became America's first Congresswoman. Next. Give this book to the young activist and to the kids who aspire to make change, even when, especially when, things are difficult. This picture book has tie-ins to politics, women in STEAM, American history, and of course, Women's History Month. Next. On the topic of inspiring women, I'd like to introduce you next to The Woman Who Built Hollywood, 12 Trailblazers in Front of and Behind the Camera, written by Susan Goldman Rubin. Next. Perfect for young movie buffs and budding feminists, this nonfiction book relays the stories of pioneering and groundbreaking women who were both in front of and behind the camera. Next. From well-known stars like Mary Pickford and Lillian Gish to underappreciated trailblazers like Anna Mae Wong and Hattie McDaniel, author Susan Goldman Rubin takes us to the Hollywood backstage, where women from all walks of life were forced to fight against sexism and racism to succeed in the industry. These women weren't just actors, they were directors, costume designers, editors, and stunt women, stars who succeeded against the odds and helped build Hollywood from the ground up. Next. The Woman Who Built Hollywood is perfect for STEAM units, is an integral part of American history, and is a perfect read for Women's History Month. Next.
All right, and finally, we just wanted to close out with some graphic novels that we have coming out soon. Next. One Cool Duck, The King of Cool is the first in a new graphic chapter book series by Mike Petcher, whose vibrant art reminds me of Selena Yoon's Duck Duck Porcupine series. Duck and the gang love all things cool, like skateboards and video games and fun catchphrases. But when a new kid comes to town, they learn that the coolest thing of all is kindness. Next. The Love Report, another launch of a series. The Love Report is a manga-inspired import from France by Becca and Maya. Lola and Grace are best friends who have questions about tween romance. Why do some couples work and others don't? To figure it out, they decide to interview and record observations about their junior high classmates and come out discovering more about female friendships and about each other. Next.
Great. Last but certainly not least, we have an upcoming graphic novel adaptation of award-winning author Nikki Grimes' beloved novel in verse, Garvey's Choice. Now with imaginative and enthralling full-color illustrations from Theodore Taylor III, Garvey has never looked better. This is the story of Garvey, who's interested in astronomy, science fiction, reading, but not the sports his dad really wants to get him into. Garvey feels like a failure until he joins the school chorus and finds a way to accept himself and finally reach out to his dad, not with the language of sports, but with music. Next. And that's it for Astra Books for Young Readers. Our contact information is on the slide. Please feel free to reach out to any of us if you have questions.
All right, hello, that was awesome. I am gonna follow up with some highlights coming up from Charlesbridge, and I have really packed them in here, so let's get started. Okay, so starting out with storytelling math, this is the Charlesbridge series, great for STEM collections, that encourages kids to think of themselves as mathematical thinkers. I love talking about this series because it celebrates diversity, math, and the power of storytelling. Next slide, please. So first up, we have two new board books in the series from Grace Lynn, the 2022 recipient of the Children's Literature Legacy Award from ALA. Next slide. In A Beautiful House for Birds, Olivia wants to paint a colorful birdhouse. She starts making a pattern of stripes on the roof, but then, oops, messes up. Now what? Can she use patterns and creative problem solving to make her birdhouse even more beautiful? Yes, definitely she can and does. Next slide. In Where Are the Birds, the chickens have laid eggs all over the yard, and May has to find them. Each hiding spot is revealed from two different perspectives, a side view and a bird's eye view, for example. Together, Birds and Eggs, these two books, feature activities perfect for exploring math in the spring and summer months. Next slide. So our next storytelling math book is Anna Crespo's Leah and Louise Puzzled, following up Leah and Louise, the first in the series. The twins have received a gift from their grandmother. It is a puzzle with a secret message. Next slide. Leah is excited because she loves a mystery, but Louise has no patience for puzzles. They're boring. Mom says that the twins have to hurry and finish the puzzle, so Detective Leah is on the case. She starts looking for clues and the shapes that fit together, and soon even Louise is hooked. Next slide. Okay, moving on to our picture books. The first up is The Penguin of Ilha Grande. This one's based on a true story about a Brazilian man who ends up with an unlikely friend. One day, João found an oil-covered penguin on the beach of his island off the coast of Brazil. He tries to get the penguin to return to the wild, and at last the penguin does molt and swim away, only to return 4 months later. Next slide. For 7 years, the penguin lived off and on with his friend, disappearing each year after his molting. I love the story about a penguin who is never a pet, but who forged a friendship with a person. And like I said, this is a popular true story, and we've recently heard that this one's being made into a film, so look out for that. Next slide, please. Right, so No World Too Big follows up our previous release of No Voice Too Small. This one focuses on international youth climate change activists around the globe by pulling together a diverse group of poets to shine a light on one of our biggest challenges going forward. Next slide. The message of this book is absolutely empowerment. The 12 young people featured know that no world is too big and no voice is too small, and each activist is featured on a spread that includes a poem and sidebar information describing their work and offering tips on how to combat climate change. And there are some very well-known activists here like Greta and some less well-known ones for people too. Next slide. All right, so Glitter Everywhere by Chris Barton, the New York Times bestselling author of Shark vs. Train and a frequent nonfiction contributor to the Charlesbridge list. This new nonfiction picture book is for kids who love glitter, kids who hate glitter, and anyone who loves a good deep dive into how things work. Next slide. So this is nonfiction, but with a bold voice that directly addresses readers. And the art by Chaya Prabhat is just, it's gorgeous. The book explores glitter from a lot of different thematic angles, science, history, and pop culture, how glitter got everywhere. It also takes a hard look at the ecological downsides of glitter and some new alternatives. Next, speaking of ecology, we have Stand as Tall as the Trees, about how an indigenous community in Ecuador fought the government to protect their land and won. Next slide. All right, debut co-author Patricia Gualenga is from Sarayaku in the Ecuadorian rainforest. She left home for school, but then came back when a company showed up claiming to have bought her community's land. The community bands together to fight the company's takeover, and then unites with other indigenous groups, ultimately taking their course to the Court of Human Rights in Costa Rica. This is a hugely inspiring story, and everyone involved is actively involved in this indigenous community. This is a gorgeous book, and we are going to be publishing this one simultaneously in English and Spanish. Next slide. All right, I Am Made of Mountains. This one, readers will visit 16 U.S. national parks. Written in lyrical prose, each spread celebrates both the diverse lands in our country's national parks and the diverse kids across the land. Next slide. In 16 different parks, a different child, often with their family, embodies a metaphor that relates to the landscape. Sidebars about each park provide accessible facts to round out the lyrical prose, and popular natural attractions. It lists park history and native flora and fauna. Next slide. Okay, next up is Night Owl Night, which is a gorgeously illustrated story of Sova, a little girl whose mother is an ornithologist who studies owls. Next slide. Sova is eager to join her mother on one of her special late night expeditions, and together they head deep into the woods and set up a mist net that migrating sahuet owls will fly into. After a lot of patient waiting, Mama shows Sova how to safely handle an owl, measure it, and band it to help her collect data. Next slide. Right, so over the past year, you might have seen news stories on CNN, BBC, and more about Maine's lobster lady, Virginia Oliver. She's 101 years old and still lobstering. She is the oldest person still hauling lobster in Maine and possibly the world. The Lobster Lady is a picture book about her life and work on the water. Next slide. This story starts with current day Virginia gearing up for another hard day of work with her son, Max. She reflects on her youth and journey into adulthood, and then back matter also expands on the details of Virginia's life in Rockland, Maine, and notes her concerns about lobster sustainability. Next slide. All right, not a monster. I love this one. An axolotl might look like a monster, but it's not. It's a cute, smiley salamander beloved by children around the globe. Known for its feathery gills, large mouth, and long tail, the axolotl is a popular pet, but it is critically endangered in its natural habitat. Next slide. Author Claudia Guadalupe Martinez introduces readers to the life cycle of this beloved amphibian and explores the Aztec mythology behind the name axolotl, which means water monster. The book also includes a glossary of Spanish vocabulary and an author's note along with a picture of the author's own pet axolotl. All right, next slide, and we're going to move on to middle grade now. The last few. So first up is Remarkable Rescue at Milkweed Meadow, a timeless tale of community by up-and-coming author Elaine Dimopoulos and illustrated by this year's Caldecott winner, Doug Salati. Yeah, I'm excited for this one too. Next slide. Butternut the rabbit is raised to believe that all species do best when they remain focused on their own kind. But gradually, after befriending a mischievous robin and a wounded deer, she begins to rethink what she's been taught. When Butternut and her new friends discover a litter of abandoned coyote pups, Butternut wants to be as brave as the heroes in the stories she tells. And you can see on the next slide, Doug's just gorgeous art, incredibly dynamic, even black and white. Next slide. Right, debut author Jennifer Irwin brings us the hilarious, fast-paced middle grade novel Captain Skidmark Dances with Destiny. Will is a Canadian 8th grader who hates hockey. He's bullied at school, doesn't have any friends, and is generally miserable. Then Will stumbles into dance and realizes he's actually pretty good at it, but his dad basically forbids him from continuing. Will's struggles feel really authentic, and while the book is really funny, the jokes really don't dull the emotions involved in trying to become whoever he needs to be. Next slide. Okay, last but definitely not least, we have Monster vs. Boy, a dual point of view novel narrated by a monster who desperately wants to be seen and the reluctant boy who wishes he wasn't the only one who could see her. Both are confused and frightened by the other, and Dawes' fear increases, that's the boy, increases when he learns that his missing mother had a monster of her own. This beautifully written exploration of found family, mental health, and intergenerational trauma begs the question, what if the monsters that haunt us aren't monsters at all? All right, and that is it for children's. I actually did include one bonus title, next slide. Not for kids, but I just had to let you know about Book Bonding by children's book author and educator Megan Dad Lambert. The beautiful essay collection divided into sections, organized around themes of parenting, adoption, race, and healing. A lot of these appeared in the Horn book first, and it invites readers to consider how they bond with friends and family through shared reading. That is that from Charlesbridge. Thank you.
Book bonding, I love it. So I'm back. Hello, everybody again. It's Kelly back presenting on behalf of Holiday House, Pixel and Ink, and Peachtree. On behalf of Terry Borzamato Greenberg, Vice President of Marketing Publicity, who could not be here today. We are delighted to share some of their upcoming spring titles with you. First up is A Flag for Juneteenth. We'll start with a picture book, and first up is a book from Kim Taylor, a speech-language pathologist, a department supervisor at a large school for deaf children, and an expert quilter. And now an author of picture books for children. Next slide. Taylor's quilts, oh, they're absolutely beautiful, reflect African-American life, and she tells stories through her materials. Next slide. After researching the origins of the Juneteenth celebration, she created a Juneteenth story quilt, which she has exhibited and presented in dozens of local schools. Next slide. Realizing that few teachers and students knew the details of the holiday, she was moved to write this book. Next slide. Next up is My Baba's Garden. Next, we have a second picture book from the award-winning author and illustrator duo of I Talk Like a River, My Baba's Garden. Next slide. Poet Jordan Scott explores the sights, sounds, and smells experienced by a child spending time with his beloved grandmother. Next slide. Let's see. Hold on one second, I'm sorry. I just got their slides mixed up. All right. So you can see how beautiful all the moments are where they are capturing the sensational impressions of a child's memory and the beautiful connections kids have with their elderly family members. And it's just a beautiful book. Next slide. The Recess Genius, how fun, open for business. It's the first installment in the Recess Genius series by Janet Sumner Johnson and illustrated by Stacy Ebert. We are introduced in this book to Regina Gray. She loves getting lost in her books. Who doesn't? Next slide. But during class, she muddles her math, splutters her spelling, and gets jumbled up in gym class. Next slide. One day, after accidentally solving a classmate's brother's problem, she becomes the playground's very own crisis manager. Next slide. But all that problem solving for other kids doesn't leave much time for escaping in her books. Can the Recess Genius use her magical powers to solve her own dilemma? Next slide. I love that. That's so cute. Galapagos Islands of Change. In this companion to Serengeti, author Leslie Buzan uses a series of interconnected verses in Galapagos Islands of Change to take readers along on the unforgettable journey of a young volcanic ecosystem influenced by seasonal ocean currents. Next slide. Stunning illustrations by Becca Standlander evoke the panoramic grandeur of this fascinating island and provide close-up details of plants and animals. Next slide. The well-researched back matter includes poetry notes, a glossary, resources, and a list of the species from this remarkable ecosystem that are highlighted in the book. Okay, next slide. The story of the saxophone. Our list wouldn't be complete without a new picture book from the award-winning husband-wife team, Leslie Klein Ramson and James E. Ransom, who was just named this year's Children's Legacy Award winner at ALA's Libbler Next. Next slide. The story of a saxophone begins with the story of a young daydreamer named Joseph Antoine Adolphe Sax, a young boy with bad luck but great ideas. Next slide. Following the saxophone's journey from Belgium, where it began in Adolphe's imagination, to the New Orleans pawn shop window, where it caught the eye of musician Sidney Bechet and became the iconic symbol of jazz music today. Next slide, please. The Night Tent. Illustrator Landis Blair's debut picture book, The Night Tent, celebrates the exploration of imagination and possibility that becomes so potent in the late hours of the night. Next slide. The Night Tent follows the journey of a boy struggling to fall asleep who peeks beneath his covers to find a world filled with nightmare adventures under a starry, tinted sky. Next slide. Watson's nightmare adventures and the quirky artwork that depict it are perfect for fans of Edward Gorey. How fun. Next slide, please. This is Tap. Savion Glover finds his funk by award-winning nonfiction and fiction author Celine Castrovilla and illustrator Laura Freeman. It's dedicated to uncovering hidden truths about both our nation's history and about ourselves. Next slide. This is a story about tap dancing, a distinctly American form that blended English, Scottish, Irish clog dancing with African tribal dancing. And it introduces young readers to Savion Glover of Happy Feet fame, the Tony Award-winning choreographer of Bring Into Noise, Bring Into Funk, who was born to feel the music, to dance and perform and invent. Next slide. Look how fun. This is Tap is illustrated by the award winner of the NAACP Image Award and a Coretta Scott King Illustrator Honor, Laura Freeman. She has done a beautiful job illustrating this important book, which features bright electric art that brings Savon's tap dancing to life. That looks really fun. Next up, please. Always wanted to be a tap dancer. All right. Changing gears just a little bit, restoring prairie, woods, and pond, how a small trail can make a big difference. Holiday House is proud to announce Books for a Better Earth, the new collection for ages 6 to 14, designed to inspire young people to become active, knowledgeable participants in caring for the planet they live on. Focusing on solutions to climate change challenges, these books look at how scientists, activists, and young readers are working to safeguard Earth's future. Here we have Restoring Prairie, Woods, and Pond, how a small trail can make a big difference, by the renowned Lori Lawler. This inspiring middle grade nonfiction book is about activism at the community level. It tells how a small village transformed a dumping ground into a nature trail with 3 distinct ecosystems that run from an elementary school to a public library and a community center. Next slide. Filled with beautiful photos, the book will explain how this trail became a valuable outdoor classroom during COVID, a STEM teaching center, and a respite for young and old, a place for community engagement. Next slide. And here is a pamphlet of all the Books for a Better Earth titles coming this year. So these are great books to have for your libraries as well. And the next slide, please. The last title for me is Buffalo Flats. In this historical fictional YA novel, 17-year-old Rebecca Levite searches for her identity in the Northwest Territories of Canada during the late 1800s. Martine Levite's Buffalo Flats is inspired by true life histories of the author's ancestors. The extraordinary novel that explores Latter-day Saints culture and the hardships of pioneer life tells of a stubborn, irreverent, and resourceful young woman who remains true to herself and discovers that it is the bonds of family, faith, and friendship that tie her to the wild and the unpredictable land she loves so fiercely. Thank you for listening to me present about Holiday House. And next up, we have Evan from Tundra. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Kelly. Hello, and thanks for being here. My name is Evan Monday. I use he, him pronouns. As was mentioned, we are Tundra Books. Oh, should we switch to Quirk or?
Um, let's see. What do you think's easier, Charnel? Sorry about that.
I'm happy to wait if it's easier to do Quirk right now.
Yes, it might be easier to do Quirk now. I'm sorry.
Quirk, is that all right? Kelsey, are you guys ready?
Yes, that's fine with me.
Okay. Sorry, Evan. False alarm.
Sorry. Keeping everyone on their toes. Well, thank you all. My name is Kelsey Hoffman. I'm from Quirk Books, and I'm really excited to share our list. Just a note at the beginning, all of our DRCs are available on Edelweiss. Next slide, please. First, I would love to introduce you to the Totally Factual Field Guide to the Supernatural series. These laugh out loud nonfiction middle grade handbooks are packed with spooky legends, fascinating history, and weird facts. The series is perfect for readers of mythology and history, such as fans of Nat Geo Kids books and the Percy Jackson series, as well as middle grade readers interested in the supernatural and spooky or kid-friendly horror like the Ology series and R.L. Stine. Next slide. So, are vampires real? Who was Vlad the Impaler? And do vampire bats ever feed on humans? Hanging with Vampires, which is the first book in the series, explores these questions and more. And the book was recently named a Kids Indie Next List pick. This hilarious and haunting exploration of how myths and legends shape our lives dives into vampire lore and literature with enchanting illustrations and fun activities like making garlic bread and a library scavenger hunt. Next slide. And just in time for Halloween, Quirk will be releasing Chilling with Ghosts. In this book, readers will uncover the spooky and spectacular world of specters. Next slide. As you'll see here, the interior design is whimsical and appealing, especially for reluctant readers. Chilling with Ghosts includes scary ghost stories and terrifying tales from history and weird science. Readers can find out what ghost fungus is and meet a couple of Shakespearean ghosts along the way, or go on a globe-trotting tour of haunted spots all around the world, from the catacombs of Paris to the Stanley Hotel. Next slide. The author of the series is Insha Fitzpatrick. Insha is also the author of the Who HQ book, Who Sparked the Montgomery Bus Boycott, Rosa Parks, and the co-author of Oh My Gods, a middle grade graphic novel series. And she brings a really fresh and funny voice to the series. And the first book will be releasing on March 28th and Chilling with Ghosts on August 15th. Next slide. And the next book that I'm really excited to share with you is an unforgettable middle grade novel by Korean-American author Flora An called A Spoonful of Time. In this, An has written a book where time travel, family recipes, and family secrets collide into what Booklist calls a warm and satisfying intergenerational story. In the book, Maya's grandmother, Harmony, may be losing her memory, but she hasn't lost her magic touch in the kitchen. Whether she serves salty miakguk, please apologies if I do mispronounce that, or sweet songpyeon, her stories about Korea come to life for Maya. Then one day, something extraordinary happens. One delicious bite of food transports Maya and her grandmother into one of her grandmother's memories. Suddenly, they're in Seoul, and her grandmother is young again. Through this, Maya learns that her family has the ability to time travel using the memories associated with their favorite dishes. As she eats her way through the past, her questions multiply until a shocking discovery transforms everything she thought she knew about family, friendship, loss, and time itself. And this book is really perfect for fans of books like When You Reach Me and Love Sugar Magic, and it includes 7 family recipes that readers can make themselves intertwined in the story. While this timeless story of family, memory, and identity will resonate with readers of all ages. Next slide. A Spoonful of Time is by rising Korean-American author Flora An. Flora's previous work includes a children's chapter book series, Pug Pals from Scholastic, and an Audible original, The Golden Orchard. And the book will be available on April 11th. Next slide. And switching gears to YA, Stars Hide Your Fire is a gripping mystery set on a space station that we're really excited for. The book has already received great blurbs from authors like Rachel Lippincott, Dahlia Adler, Vanessa Len, and Zoe Hana Makuta. With shocking plot twists, vividly written world building, and deadly court intrigue, Stars Hide Your Fire is a thrilling and delightfully fun whodunit, perfect for fans of YA sci-fi and fantasy like The Darkness Outside Us and Iron Widow. The book also includes a queer main character with a sapphic romance woven throughout the action. And a little more about the book. As an expert thief from a minor moon, Cass knows a good mark when she sees one. The Emperor's Ball is her chance to steal a fortune for herself, her ailing father, and her scrappy crew of thieves and market vendors. Her plan is simple. 1, she's going to hitch a ride to the planet of Oris, the dazzling heart of the Empire. 2, sneak into the Imperial Palace and attend the Emperor's Ball. And 3, steal from the rich, the royal, and the royally insufferable. But when the Emperor is found dead and everyone in the palace is named a suspect, Cass becomes one of the main suspects. To clear her name, she works with Amaris, a gorgeous and mysterious rebel with her own reasons for being on the station. Together, they unravel a secret that could change the fate of the Empire. YA readers in particular will fall in love with Cass and Amaris as they attempt to solve a murder and take on an empire. And with the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance, Stars Hide Your Fires will keep you guessing until the very end. Next slide. The author of Stars Hide Your Fires is Jessica Mary Best. She is a multi-award winning freelance writer and editor and is the writer behind the award-winning sci-fi fiction audio drama, The Strange Case of Starship Iris. And Stars Hide Your Fire will be on sale July 11th. Next slide. And finally, we have Hunters of the Lost City by Callie Wallace, which came out last spring. This middle grade fantasy was named a kids indie next list pick and received a star review from Kirkus. And the book has been compared on many occasions to Kelly Barnhill's The Girl Who Drank the Moon. This is really perfect for fans of classic middle grade fantasy by Tamara Pierce, Shannon Hale, and Holly Black. And Hunters of the Lost City is a magical story about the price of keeping secrets and the power of finding your voice, set in a world brimming with monsters and sorcery. 12-year-old Octavia grew up believing that the town of Vittoria was the only one left in the world. The sole survivors of a deadly magical war and plague, the people of Vittoria know there's no one left outside the town walls, except for the terrible monsters that prowl the forest. But then the impossible happens. Octavia meets another girl beyond the walls, someone who isn't from town, and everything she's ever believed is thrown into question, and there's no going back. In her quest for the truth, Octavia discovers a world full of lies, monsters, and magic, and she'll have to use every scrap of her skill, wits, and courage to uncover what's real about Vittoria and the rest of the world. Next slide. And critically acclaimed author Callie Wallace is known for her compelling characters, rich world building, and unexpected twists. She's the author of many books for children and adults, including City of Islands, Shallow Graves, and Salvation Day. And next slide. So that's it from us. As I mentioned, all the DRCs for our titles are on Edelweiss and some are on NetGalley. If you have any questions, please reach out to Kate Brown on the contact slide here. And thank you.
Thanks so much, Kelsey. You already briefly met me. My name is Evan. As mentioned, we are Tundra Book Group located in snowy Toronto, Canada, home of fairly regular mayoral scandals, but we sell books across North America, and these are some of our big titles for the first half of 2023. Next slide, please. First, we'll be looking at some must-read books for youth by Indigenous authors, starting with Wab Canoe. Wab has been a hip-hop artist, a broadcaster here in Canada, and he's currently the leader of the Manitoba NDP, which is kind of like the Democrats, but more so. In 2021, we published his first YA novel, Walking in Two Worlds, featuring a young Indigenous girl on the res who lives a double life as a very popular player in a massive multiplayer online game called the Floraverse. Imagine Ready Player One by way of Reservation Dogs. Next slide. In this new book, The Everlasting Road, the boundaries between virtual and real have become dangerously blurred for our heroine Bugs. Devastated by the loss of her older brother, Bugs returns to the Floriverse and begins developing Wawate, a bot that will be both an incredible weapon and a source of comfort. Wawate begins to look and act a lot like the brother she misses so much, complicating her grief. Not only is this series a perfect read for teens who would much rather be gaming, it speaks to the importance and sometimes dangers of the virtual lives so many of us now lead. Next slide. Shuri Dimmeline is known to many readers as the author of The Marrow Thieves. Her post-apocalyptic YA novel is something of a phenomenon across North America. Here in Canada, it's been a bestseller since its publication in 2017, and we've got a spooky new standalone YA novel from Dimmeline for the goth and goth-adjacent readers in your life, Funeral Songs for Dying Girls. Next slide. After inadvertently starting rumors of a haunted cemetery, are there other kinds? Winifred, a teen who lives in an apartment above the crematorium office with her father, befriends the real-life ghost of a queer Ojibwe girl, Phil, and she starts to question everything she knows about life, love, and death, especially since her mother is buried in that very same cemetery. Also, she's maybe falling in love with that ghost. Next slide. David A. Robertson is a Winnipeg-based Cree author for children whose profile has been growing steadily over the past few years. In 2021, he published the picture book On the Trapline, which won the Governor General's Award, and his Mississauga Saga series, which he calls a sort of indigenous Narnia, was optioned for television by ABC Signature. More recently, he was hired by us at Tundra to be editorial director of a forthcoming children's imprint with a focus on publishing new indigenous creators. We love David's work, and his new picture book, The Song That Called Them Home, a collaboration with two-spirited Ojibwe and Irish illustrator Maya McKibben, is no exception. This is an adventure and song-filled cinematic fantasy inspired by Indigenous legends. Next slide. Lauren is out fishing in a lake with her brother James and their Mosham grandpa when the kids are thrown overboard and James is pulled away by the Memagwisiwak, creatures who live around water and like to meddle with humans. Lauren must follow the Memagwisiwak through a watery portal, seen here, to bring her brother back. Both David and Tree will be at the TLA conference in Austin later this year. Next slide. We all know kids love graphic novels, but how do you know if they're quality graphic novels? Well, we like to think we have a proven record with our best-selling and beloved Narwhal and Jelly series, so we'd like to introduce you to some of our other great graphic options for young readers. We'll start with trio Weenie featuring Frank and Beans. Author Maureen Fergus and illustrator Alexandra Bai first introduced readers to this hilarious dachshund, guinea pig, and cat, as well as their human Bob, in Mad About Meatloaf, and now they're back with more comical hijinks in The Pancake Problem. Next slide. Weenie, the dachshund, is a pretty good dog, but all bets are off when it comes to the thing Weenie loves more than anything else, pancakes. So when the supersonic pancake maker malfunctions, Weenie knows exactly what to do. Well, he thinks he does. This is an action-packed graphic novel that is infectiously funny and features the most adorable animal drawings. Next slide, please. Blasting right into our next book, we have a hilarious and eye-popping new early graphic novel series, Pluto Rocket, and the first book, New in Town, by Paul Gilligan. Paul may be familiar to some readers as the creator of the nationally syndicated Pooch Cafe comic strip, and this new series features Pluto Rocket, a friendly alien who, as soon as she lands on Earth, meets Joe Pidge, a wisecracking pigeon who becomes her new best friend. Next slide. Joe Pidge, who is styled after Midnight Cowboy's Ratso Rizzo, how many kids' books can say that, is not just a pigeon, but also the stylish king of the neighborhood, and is enlisted in Pluto's secret mission to find out what life in the neighborhood is really like. Kids will love Pluto's boundless curiosity and optimism and her dynamic with Joe. Next slide. We've already mentioned the Podtastic Pals Narwhal and Jelly by creator Ben Clanton, so I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you that Narwhal's School of Awesomeness, the 6th book in the series, and a perfect back-to-school present for both students and teachers, will be available in paperback this June. And we're already looking forward to spooky season with the brand new A Super Scary Narwhalloween, Book 8, which is coming this July. It's even got a glow-in-the-dark cover. Next slide, please. Narwhal and Jelly celebrate the spookiest time of year with a super twist. Narwhal loves Halloween. It's a great excuse to dress up in a silly costume like a ghost or a mermaid or a banana. It's a skeleton of fun, but Jelly isn't dressing up. He's a little scared of this time of year. Can his good friend help him enjoy Halloween? Next slide. Something a little different from our other graphic novels and intended for older readers, ages 12 and up, is Mario Broussard and Gerard Dubois' Who Owns the Clouds? This book is a powerful and visually arresting fictional graphic tale of trauma, memory, and hope in the aftermath of war. The book won the Governor General's Award and the Bologna Ragazzi Award. We've published the English translation of this graphic novel inspired by the history of 20th century European conflict, and we think it's an important addition to reading lists that cover war and its effects. Next slide, please. The book looks at the effects of war from a personal and mental health perspective and speaks to a wide variety of contexts, including the Holocaust, the Spanish Civil War, and the wars in Bosnia and Kosovo. And it has relevance to the current conflict in the Ukraine. Next slide, please. Now it's time to talk about novels of the non-graphic kind. You won't see many pictures outside of the front cover, but they remain vivid in their imagery. And we'll start with a book that was published just 2 weeks ago, but is already generating a lot of buzz, The Big Sting by Rochelle Delaney. Delaney is the author of the middle grade gems, The Metro Dogs of Moscow and Clairvoyant, my personal favorite. And she's written a lighthearted mystery about, well, bees. Next slide, please. Leo isn't an adventurer at all. He'd rather explore in a book or a video game over real life. His little sister Lizzie is the very opposite. So when he goes to visit his grandpa on Heron Island, he's looking forward to a more laid-back stay, even if his grandpa is still grieving grandma's recent passing. Then grandma's prized beehives go missing in the dead of night, and grandpa vows to track down the thieves. And he takes Leo and Lizzie with him on a danger-filled quest that still remains pretty safe and fun. Next slide, please. Moving into the YA category, you know best-selling award-winning author Meg Rossa from books like How I Live Now and Picture Me Gone. And this Meishi is a gritty and nostalgic, intoxicating paperback original for teens about a summer of unforgettable firsts set in 1980s New York City. It's a summer of 1983, and Beth is starting a summer internship that was meant to be everything that she wanted, but from the moment she arrives in the city, she feels wrong in every single way. Then she starts to meet her fellow interns, ambitious out-of-towner Dan, preppy rich boy Oliver, and Edie, a beautiful but brittle, magnetic instant best friend. This is a novel about firsts, the loss of innocence, and a complicated female friendship that is right up there with the best of Elena Ferrante. Next slide, please. What about something more in the thriller vein? Well, you're in luck because some authors like Kelly Armstrong have been writing YA thrillers like The Masked Truth and Missing for years, and we feel her new book out this April will take her profile to new heights. Someone Is Always Watching finds a tight group of high school friends with their lives disrupted by unexpected bursts of aggression and increasingly disturbing nightmares. These strange happenings culminate in a shocking event at their school. One of the teens, Gabrielle, is covered in blood and found in front of their dead principal with no memory of what happened. What is happening at their school, and how much of the friends' lives have been a total lie? This is a very creepy and conspiracy-minded thriller. Next slide. And finally, we want to talk about a YA novel that hopefully needs no introduction, and that's Sharon J. Zhao's best-selling phenomenon, Iron Widow. This book is out in paperback next week. Sound the klaxons. This is not a drill. The Hunduns are coming. The instant #1 New York Times bestseller, the book that launched 1,000 comps, is now available in a stunning new paperback with bonus content. Next slide. Bonus content that includes a discussion guide and concept art for the chrysalis that Zetian pilots. It's not too late to jump on the Iron Widow runaway train. Both YA and manga fans have fallen for this epic blend of Chinese history and mecha sci-fi, and you've still got a while before the sequel, Heavenly Tyrant, hits shelves. Next slide. That's it for now. Thank you so much for listening. We love hearing from readers, librarians, and booksellers of all kinds, so please reach out and touch someone through any of these methods. Thanks again.
Well, Evan, first of all, I love your background. I love those big postcards from Penguin. Anyway, I just want to thank you all so much for joining us today. I knew I could count on our wonderful client publishers to bring you scary books, graphic novels, STEM books, beautiful picture books, books about vampires. We can come on, we just have a little bit of everything. So we thank you all again for joining us. Again, if there's any questions, you can email library@penguinrandomhouse.com. But remember, we'll be sending out a wrap-up report that will have all the titles in it as well. And thank you to Overdrive for helping us to put this event together. And thank you, Charnel, for the back end, and for all of you for listening, and for honestly, what a wonderful presentation of titles. Thank you. Have a great day.